Well, here at Horizons, since the very beginning, so we are about 26 years old. Since the very beginning, we have had a focus on the next generation, the younger people in our community that are growing up, and we want to pour into them. So that's kind of the history of Horizons, and that is not stopping now. We are going to continue to pour into the next generations, not only the kids in our family, but also in the community. So we do things here like supporting schools and teachers and students and families, and we also do something else that we have quite a few people who are part of Horizons who are also part of that. So today we are excited to learn more and to celebrate the TeamMates mentoring program. We're going to have several guests up here on stage, but I want to welcome our first guest who will be giving a little message. So please help me welcome Coach Dr. Tom Osborne.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me here today. And I've been here 2 or 3 other times in the past, so it's good to see you again. And as I was coming over today, I thought about this occasion where this young guy was staying in a church. He was looking at some pictures on the wall, and the preacher came up behind him and he said, "Young man, do you know who these pictures are of?" The young guy said, "No." He said, I really don't. And the preacher said, "Well, these are pictures of people who died in the service." And the young guy said, "Oh, that's too bad." He said, "Was it the 9 o'clock or the 10:30?" And so I hope we don't lose any of you in the 9 o'clock service. I'll be personally responsible, I guess. I thought I'd just talk a little bit about my own personal experience. That's what you do when you get old, you know. And December 7th, 1941 was a time in history that really stands out in my mind. I was 4 years old, and I was sitting in my grandparents' living room with my dad, and word came over the radio that Pearl Harbor had been bombed. And I remember my dad's reaction. He jumped out of his chair, and he said, "I'm going to get into this thing." And I wasn't real sure what was going on, but I knew something pretty major had happened. And he joined up. He didn't have to go. He was 35 years old, had a wife and 2 kids, was well beyond draft age, and signed up, went in as a captain of a company, and landed in Normandy and went across France, Belgium, Battle of the Bulge, and then on into Germany. He was gone for 5 years. And I remember how I felt. My mom was working at an ammunition depot, and one day I stood up there in St. Paul, Nebraska, 20 miles away, and saw the smoke rising because it had blown up. And fortunately, my mom was not killed. But those were difficult times, and so I felt inferior because all the kids in my school had dads, and I didn't have one. And I think my life was not completely falling apart, but it wasn't on a very good trajectory. And I happened to have an uncle who lived not far away, and he kind of took me under his wing, and he taught me how to fish, took me hunting, and taught me how to swim, and spent time with me. And so I guess he became what you'd call a mentor. And that kind of rings a bell with where the word mentor comes from. You may have heard about the book written by Homer called The Odyssey. And the hero in the Odyssey was a guy named Odysseus. And he was going to have to leave to fight in the Peloponnesian Wars and was going to be gone for quite a while. And he had a friend named Mentor. And he got Mentor aside. And he said, "Mentor, I want you to take care of my son Telemachus." And so that was where the word mentor came from. And mentor took care of the development, the education of Telemachus. And so I guess my story kind of parallels that of what Homer wrote about. So right now, I know it was mentioned earlier that you're interested in young people and youth. And this is my perspective. It may not match yours. But I feel that the greatest challenge that our nation is facing right now is what's happening to so many of our young people. Many would say, well, the biggest problem is the economy or relations, foreign relations, or maybe immigration, all those kinds of things. And those are certainly issues. And I'm not downplaying the importance of them. But the next generation has to be able to pull things off. And so over 42 years of coaching, starting in 1962 and running through 1998, I saw a lot of changes. Because when we first started to go out and recruit in the 60s, very seldom did we run across a young person that we were recruiting that wasn't growing up under the same roof with both biological parents. As time went on, that began to change, and we saw more and more kids were from single-parent families, and we even had a few from no-parent families. And so the foundation was not as stable. And right now, over half of our young people are growing up in families without both biological parents. So over half have suffered some fairly significant trauma in their life of losing a parent somewhere along the way. There's a survey done by the National Mentoring Partnership that indicated that 9 million young people of mentoring age, that's from about 3rd grade through 12th grade, about 9 million report they have no single adult in their life that they feel cares about them unconditionally, someone that they can turn to in a crisis, somebody that will always be in their corner. And that's about 1 out of 6. And so the next generation has to be able to pull things off. And no great civilization lasts any further than the next generation. And so if you think about it, go back through history, Greek society, Roman Empire, British Empire, every one of those great civilizations fell from within. And it's because the institutions broke down. And so I'm not here totally to preach doom and gloom to you. I'm just saying we better be on the alert, because I think things have changed significantly. And so it isn't just the family structure in the early 70s, late 60s. You might remember an event called Woodstock, and the drug culture began to blossom full bloom. And so I think today, very few young people get through middle school without the opportunity to participate in some type of illegal substance. Now, thankfully, not all of them accept, but some of them do. And so we began to drug test our players, and that would have been unheard of back in the 60s. And we invariably found that there were a few, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5% came in, and they'd be positive on that first drug test. And we almost always found that they had started back in about the 6th or 7th grade. And those young guys very seldom were able to stay with us, because we'd test them and they'd fail, and they'd test them and fail, and eventually we had to part company. And so they were so far addicted that things just didn't change. And then the last thing I'll mention to you, and again, this is a little bit disturbing, but some of the messages our kids are being inundated with today, some of the music lyrics, some of the television content, some of the movies, some of the stuff on the internet, and certainly social media is bombarding them. And the messages, in many cases, aren't very wholesome. And many of the messages that we're seeing in the public domain today would not have been allowed in a public setting 20, 30 years ago. So it's very confusing to young people. So it's a difficult time to try to weave your way through adolescence and emerge on the other side in good shape to live an effective adult life. And so back in 1991, I got in front of our football team one day and I said, how many of you guys be willing to serve as a mentor to a 7th or 8th grade boy in the Lincoln Public Schools? And 22 hands went up, and we didn't know much about what we were doing, but we matched them up and we said just meet with them once a week and meet with them in the school, and then once a month we'd have a meeting where we'd get everybody together, play some basketball, have some pizza, and usually had a speaker, talked about academic achievement or something, and things went pretty well, and eventually it played itself out and these guys got to be seniors. And we were really surprised because of the 22, 21 graduated on time. And the one that didn't was riding dirt bikes around the country making money. And so he graduated a year later, but he did graduate. And we really weren't handed 22 Phi Beta Kappa candidates. So we were surprised. And then the thing that really surprised us was of those 22, 18 went on to college. And we had thought from that population that maybe 4 or 5 might. And so we thought, well, maybe there's something to this. And so we expanded the program, began to use adults more as mentors. We didn't have enough football players. First here in Lincoln, then across the state of Nebraska, then into Iowa, Kansas, South Dakota, Wyoming. And currently we're mentoring about 10,000 young people in those 5 states. And about 1,300 here in Lincoln. And we have about 600 on a waiting list. So I'm mentoring a young guy at East High School. He's in the 10th grade. He'd been on a waiting list for 4 years. And so we would really like to close that gap if we can. We'd like to have at least 2,000 young people with mentors here in Lincoln if we can. And so over that period of time, the last 31 years, we've mentored 45,000 kids. And none of those kids has been harmed by a mentor. And so that's primarily because it's school-based. It's because we do screening and we do training. And so it's been a very safe environment. We find that last year our graduation rate from high school from those in TeamMates was 98%. And you'd expect that from that population, the majority of which are single parent and below the poverty line would be maybe about 75%. So we know that academic achievements improved. We also found that about 85% of our young people said that they're more hopeful about the future. And Gallup has said that the most powerful predictor of future success in life is hope. Because so many young people are in situations that they don't envision much optimism about surviving or living in that type of environment forever. And so a mentor can show you some path through and some light at the end of the tunnel. And so being hopeful is very powerful. And let me just mention in closing that Jesus was a mentor. You think about it, he lived in fairly ordinary circumstances. He did not hold public office. He never wrote a book. He had no significant personal wealth. He had no military backing, except maybe Peter when he cut off the guy's ear in the Garden of Gethsemane, and that was only a one-man army, I guess. And so he had 12 very, very common people that he worked with, and he mentored them. And so what a mentor does is spend time. And the most precious gift we can give another person is not something of economic value, which we often think. The most precious gift we can give is the gift of time. Because we can make more money, but none of us can make more time. We have only so much of it. And when we give that which we have in a limited amount, It's the most precious gift that we can give. And so, if you think about it, Jesus served as a role model then, and he does today as well. And so he came to say, it isn't all about an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, where if somebody does something to you, you immediately retaliate. He said, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. He demonstrated it by, as he hung on the cross, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And so he was just talking the talk. He was walking the walk. And he actually forgave those people who were crucifying him at that time. And so what a mentor does is, number one, as I mentioned, spend time with somebody. And a mentor listens, and that's almost a lost art anymore. Sometimes we talk past each other. And so if you listen empathetically and try to walk a mile in that person's shoes, it's a great gift, because one of the greatest gifts we can give somebody is to understand them and to let them know that we understand what they're going through. And we feel to some limited degree what they're feeling. And so you listen. The second thing that's so important is to show up, to be consistent. And so there are so many weeks in a school year, and we expect those mentors to show up almost every week. And so it's pretty simple, because most mentoring occurs over the lunch period. And those lunch periods are usually about 35 minutes in length. And so we have a building coordinator, and that building coordinator will find a place for you to meet, a place to eat lunch if you want to eat lunch. At least the young person will have lunch. And then if you normally come on Wednesday and you find that you have a conflict on Wednesday, call the building coordinator, and they'll move it to Thursday or Friday or whenever. So there's flexibility, and you can mentor in almost any school building in Lincoln, whether it be elementary, middle, or high school, public or private. We're in every school building. And so it's important to remember that every mentee wants a mentor. Every one of them has raised their hand and said, I would like to have a mentor. Nobody's forced into TeamMates. And their parents or parent, if there are, also agree. And so you're not thrusting yourself into a situation where you're unwanted. Let me conclude by this. Almost every mentor we talk to says this. They say, I think that I maybe get more out of this than my mentee does. I've always been surprised to hear that, because here these people are giving of their time and they're going out of their way. And why would they be getting more out of it than their mentee? And the reason is, I think that what they're saying is it gives their life a sense of purpose and meaning. And so Gallup did a poll several years ago, and they asked the question of a fairly large cross-section of Americans. They said, are you happy? And most Americans said, yes, we feel pretty happy. We have enough to eat. We have clothing, and we have a house, and we have a roof over our heads, and we have some discretionary wealth. So yeah, we're relatively happy. And so happiness, according to their definition, was receiving and getting and sometimes taking. And then they asked this other question. They said, do you feel that your life has purpose or meaning? And the answer came back in a great many cases, not so much. And they found that purpose and meaning comes from serving and from caring for and sometimes sacrificing for somebody else. And Mother Teresa said something I think is very wise. She said, unless a life is lived for others, it's not worth living. And so we hope that some of you, I know there are many of you are mentors, and we know that there's going to be a panel here to follow, let you hear a little bit about the nuts and bolts of mentoring. And Emily Hawk is here, and she has a desk out there, and those of you who are interested can stop by and maybe get signed up. So anyway, it's my pleasure to be here today, and I want to thank you for listening, and hope that some of you decide to serve in some way, and mentoring is certainly a very good way if you're going to invest in a young person. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Dr. Tom, for being a faithful follower of Jesus, and that is an incredible thing. So there are some people coming up here on stage. Emily, who's from TeamMates, she's the community engagement coordinator that Tom mentioned, and we have a few of our Horizons folks that are teammate mentors currently. But I know that there are others of you, so raise your hand if you are a TeamMates mentor currently. Okay, yeah, we have a couple out there. So we have Mary and Ken and Kyle and Jerry who are going to share a little bit about their experience of being a teammate mentor. So, and this is Emily. So welcome them.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us this morning. I want to start by introducing myself. My name is Emily Hack, and I am both a member of the TeamMates staff and a mentor myself. My mentee is a freshman this year. We've been together for about 5 years. And so I just want to first give the opportunity for all of these folks up here to tell a little bit of their mentoring story. If you could give your name, where your mentee goes to school, how long you've been matched, and if you could tell these folks what prompted you to become a mentor.
Good morning. I'm Mary Kenning, and my mentee is at Southeast High School. She's a sophomore. We started in 3rd grade. I actually became a mentee after the last time Coach Osborne spoke here, and he came in the spring, or kind of the winter. I filled out all the paperwork. We got matched the end of March of that year, and I've been doing it ever since. So,
hi, I'm Ken Babcock. I've been a mentor for about 11 years. I've had 2 mentees. The first one went to Park and then East, and the current one went to SCO and goes to Southwest. And I worked at Lincoln Public Schools, so we knew a lot about the teammates. And I listened to Dr. Osborne also, but that was most of that came from the job. I knew about it and I knew it was important, so I jumped on.
My name is Kyle Sajovic, and I've been a mentor for 13 years. My current mentee I've been with for 4 years. He is a senior at Southwest, and I also got started with TeamMates because of a volunteerism day at church about 14 years ago. We had a few different speakers that day, and I just felt like TeamMates, out of the speakers that day, was one that really touched me personally, and I felt like that was something that I could easily fit into my schedule, but more importantly, hopefully make a difference for a younger kid that is looking for a role model or just somebody to listen and talk to.
Your graduate is graduating here soon, right? Yeah. Jerry Bartek. I'm in my first year of being a mentor, and Southwest High School, he's a freshman. But I want to give the message. I've heard Mr. Osborne give this specific speech 4 times, and I'm finally a mentor. When I heard it the first time, I said, I'm going to be a mentor someday. And I think I heard it, 15 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago. Mr. Osborne comes into your companies. So he's come into my companies twice over the years. So about 6 years ago, he came to Horizons, and I said, I'm going to do it again. And then he came to my company, Pfizer, about 5 years ago, and I told him afterwards I'm going to be a mentor. I'm in year 1, so don't procrastinate, because I missed out and my mentees missed out. So I really encourage you to look in the mirror and take it very serious today, and don't be a procrastinator like I was.
Awesome. I love that message. So I want to ask you guys, what do you think your mentee gets out of your specific relationship, and how has being a mentor helped you grow?
I know my mentee gets a lot just by the stability. I show up, I'm there to listen to her. She started out very shy, didn't talk much at all. We read a book. She liked to read. I like to read. That's what we'd spend our time doing, was just reading aloud a book she was reading. Over the years now, I come. A lot of times we don't even do games or anything. She just wants to talk. And I'll say, sometimes you need to talk to your counselor about this. She goes, I'll just email. And I said, well, just go talk to him. And she's like, I go, you talk? She goes, I don't like to talk to people. And I go, you talk to me all the time. She goes, I know, but I know you. And we just have, our relationship is very close. And I just see her not getting that elsewhere, and evidently I fill that spot for her. And she's really thrived over the years, from that shy little girl to now she's doing activities at school that she didn't used to do. And it's just gratifying to see her grow as a person, I guess, is what I get out of it, is just happy to see her grow.
That's awesome. And I do want to add, Mary, you mentioned that sometimes you would read, sometimes you would play games. This is not a tutoring program. So if you're worried about remembering your algebra, don't worry about that. If you've got a good Uno game, you can be a good mentor.
I think hopefully what the gentlemen that I get to work with have gained, hopefully, is some feeling of stability of a person that's there for them, non-judgmental, although you do offer advice. And because, you know, just with your own children, if they're going to touch a stove, you tell them not to touch the stove. And what I get out of it is it's just humbling. It makes you appreciate what you have and what I had growing up with, you know, a strong nuclear family and grand folks and uncles and people around me all the time, wonderful mentors. And a lot of these kids, they have very, very few of those.
My experience, my teammate was already very academically successful and athletically successful, and so that was a little different from one of my prior ones. So he already had a lot of things going for him in life, but trust in adult figures and just building relationships with other people, I think, is the biggest thing that I've seen him grow over the 4 years together. Just being able to confide in somebody else, and then also learn to allow other people into your life, and what joy that can bring to you. And then as for my side of it, when I very first started at 13 years ago, both of my boys were very young. And so as a newer parent, it kind of gave me a chance to see what other kids are experiencing that are a little bit ahead of my kids' ages. So I felt like I was getting a little bit of guidance as a parent of what might be to come for my own children. But then as I've gone, as my kids have grown and I've gone farther into the program, to me, it's just the reward of seeing that person become a young adult and feel that even if I was just a small part of that, that hopefully I made a difference.
I asked for an athlete. I thought I could really connect with an athlete. So I did get an athlete sort of this year one. So it's really cool because he's really into athletics, too much into athletics. So I'm there to give him balance and perspective and encouragement and hope of so many other things in life beyond that athletics that he's so focused on that he maybe, doesn't get that at home. So once you get them talking, boy, they just want to talk about their life and open up, and you open up those horizons of what else is out there, and you get sort of a connectivity. I call it street cred with your mentee, and then you're at a level where you can talk about anything potentially. So I've really had that great experience, and as Dr. Osborne said, it's always good to serve. When you serve, you feel purpose and you feel joy. And Jesus was our mentor and our role model along those lines. And it is a true aspect of when you're a mentor, you enjoy serving and the joys of that and the purpose of that.
Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing. Thank you.
Mr. Osborne, thank you. Trent. Trent is also here, and Emily from TeamMates. We appreciate the time you spent. And we will have that booth out there with the mentors out there that you can talk to either today or after. I don't think we're focused on sign up today. We're focused on planting the seed and looking in the mirror. You have time and you have talents. And it's really a lunch hour that we're talking about here. You spend a lunch hour once a week, 24 hours or 24 weeks out of the year is sort of the commitment. So we think a large percentage of you should really look at that. And don't be a procrastinator like Jerry Bartik was, listening to Tom Osborne 4 times, and he's finally a mentor. That's not the right approach. So I really encourage you along those lines. You all have time, you have talents. You all really do have the talent to be a mentor. And then lastly, we're going to talk about offering here, which is your treasures that you can give back to the ministries at Horizons. So we encourage that with your treasures that you have. We encourage you to support the ministries. As you can see, supporting TeamMates is just a cool aspect of one of many ministries we have at Horizons. Thank you for your time today.